So what are some solutions that you can implement to protect yourself against cross-site scripting? First of all, you got to scan your website using commercial web hacking tools like Acunitex Web Vulnerability Scanner to find any potential cross-site scripting vulnerabilities that may exist in the code. Simple manual check is something that you can do. For example, whenever there's an input field in your website or any other website, try typing the following code and pressing enter or submit button and see what happens. If you get some kind of error message or if you get like a pop-up, it means that the pop-up will say CSS vulnerable. So if you see that pop-up, that means that it is vulnerable to cross-site scripting. If you do not see that pop-up, if you see anything else, that means it is not vulnerable to cross-site scripting. Finally, when you're writing the programming source code of your website, it's important to validate all types of input that you receive from the user, everything from form data, get methods, post methods, and so on. So that kind of brings me to the end of the whole phishing attacks topic. And if you've noticed, it's taken us quite some time to finish the entire phishing attacks topic, but finally we come to the end of it. What are some solutions that you can implement to avoid getting phished? First of all, whenever you visit absolutely any website on the internet, the first thing that you need to check is that the website should be HTTPS and not HTTP. So usually phishing pages will not be HTTPS. And secondly, of course, when you're checking whether it's HTTPS or not, you should check the URL as well and make sure that it is a legitimate website and not a phishing page. Secondly, a lot of companies try to use virtual keyboards or RSA security tokens to make it harder for phishing attacks to work, because usually RSA security token is something that you keep with you, and although you could execute a man-in-the-middle attack against even RSA security tokens, it's not that easy to do though. Most importantly, use common sense, like never click on a link to open a sensitive website. Always open the browser manually type in the URL of that website, and only then open that page. Because usually most of the phishing attacks involve the attacker sending a special link to the victim. Victim clicks on the link thinking that they're going to a trusted website, but actually they're taken to a fake login screen. So instead, if you never click on a link, and instead make it a habit that you'll always manually open a website, manually type www.gmail.com, and then log in, then chances of you getting phished or becoming a victim to a phishing attack are very low. Most browsers nowadays have built-in security. So Google Chrome, for example, will show you this warning message whenever you visit a particular page that is known to be a phishing page. Secondly, in Gmail as well, if you receive a phishing link in a particular email, like this email at the bottom which says your email ID has won $1 million British pounds in Microsoft promo, it will show you a message that says that this could be a phishing scam. And finally, if you're not sure, if you receive a link and if you're not sure whether it's a safe link or whether it is a phishing page, then always use this website called fishtank.com. Fishtank.com. So essentially you copy paste that link into this particular website and click on this button which says, is it a fish? And within a few seconds, it will check or search its entire database and will inform you or warn you in case it detects that it's a known phishing page or a known phishing link. Similarly, there's another website called antifishing.org where you can actually report any pages that you know are phishing pages, so that they can build a global database of known phishing pages, which will then be helpful to other users. Finally, McAfee, the company that has a popular antivirus software, they have created this website or tool called Site Advisor, which essentially is a free download. It will work along with your browser, and as you're surfing the internet or browsing websites or visiting, everyday websites that you visit often, it'll keep checking and telling you whether the website is safe or whether it is unsafe. So with that, I pretty much come to the end of this phishing attack lecture. We kind of started somewhere in the middle of last lecture, and then now, 1 hour into today's lecture, we have come to an end of the phishing attacks lecture, but we still have an hour left in today's lecture. So let me go ahead and start the next topic, which is something known as query string attacks. Query string attacks. Most websites that we visit on the internet, we interact with those websites by filling up some forms. For example, when you go to google.com, there is a search box. So you type some terms or keywords into that search box. Those search terms or keywords that you type are sent from your computer to the Google server. Google will then search its database and show you some results. Right? Similarly, if you go to, say, some airline website or maybe some travel website like cleartrip.com or goibibo.com or makemytrip.com or yatra.com, you select your source. So if maybe you're flying from Delhi to Bombay, or you go to IRCTC website, you're booking a train from Delhi to Bombay. So you type the source station, destination station, the date. So all the information that you fill up in that form has to be sent from your computer to that IRCTC website or Cleartrip, Yatra, MakeMyTrip or GoIBibo. So all those things that are transmitted from your machine to the remote website are sent using query strings. So what exactly are query strings and how do they help you and why are they relevant to computer hacking? Query strings are used to dynamically exchange data between the user and a web application that is running on a web server. Typically, data entered by a user in an online form on a web page is transmitted to the web application on the server using query strings when the user submits the form. So typically there will be a form that you fill up. As soon as you press on search or submit or enter or login or whatever, all the information that you filled up in the form is sent to the remote server using query strings. Now query strings can be transmitted between the user's computer and the remote website using two different methods. You have the get method and then you have a post method. So get method and post method. So what is the main difference between get and post? Now before that, let us see an example of what does a query string look like. Now if you look at this URL, the URL is website.com/path/application ?query string. So for example, query strings are used to pass data entered by a user in an online form to a remote website. So in that case, if I'm filling up a form, say entering my name and age, if you look at the second URL, that's what query strings look like. Query strings can be passed in the URL or they can be passed within the page itself. So if it's a dynamic page, then within the page itself you could have some kind of link. So when you click on purchase button, if you look at the screen, if you know HTML, it says checkout.html ? Followed by the query strings. Destination is equal to Delhi and fare is equal to 8761. So that is what query strings kind of look like. So now we understand what query strings are. Essentially, query strings are the form data that you have filled up on a website, and the data has to go from your computer to the remote website. How does it get transmitted? It is transmitted using query strings. Now there are two ways in which query strings can be transmitted. You have a get method and then you have a post method. In get method, what happens is the query string data is transmitted as part of the URL itself. As part of the URL itself. In the post method, the query strings are transmitted in the body of the HTTP request. So obviously in the get method, since the query data or query string data is in the URL itself, it is not very secure because anybody can see it. Plus it gets stored in the history. Plus if a criminal is running a data sniffer, they can record the get method query strings. But any data that is transmitted using post method is very secure because it does not appear in the URL. So data sniffers will not generally work. And it's never stored in the history. So usually get method should be used for retrieving data from a database, and post method should be used for, it can be used for retrieving, obviously, a more secure way of retrieving, but generally it is used for updating or submitting or authentication. So if you're logging into some online website, they'll use a post method. Otherwise your username password will get transmitted in the URL itself. So let's see an example of this. So if you look at the screen, this is a ClearTrip website. I search for flights from Calcutta to Bombay. And if you look at the URL, in the URL itself, all the information is there. So it says from is equal to CCU, which is the Calcutta airport code, to is equal to BOM, which is Mumbai airport code, and departure date, number of adults, number of children, number of infants, class of travel, economy or business class, specific airline that you have selected, and so on. So clearly cleartrip.com is using get method to transmit these query string data values, that is what I'm searching for, which tickets I'm searching for, using get method. So let me demonstrate this to you. If you look at the URL, it is cleartrip.com, right? Now I'm selecting Delhi to Bombay on a particular date, and I click on search flights. And if you look at the URL has become something like this. So I'll just copy paste into this notepad file. So it is searching for Delhi to Bombay tickets on 21st August, right? Now what if I just change this query string itself? So I type CCU to BOM, and I just copy paste that into my browser. I can manipulate the results automatically. So the results that I'm getting now are Calcutta to Bombay. So get method is not secure at all. Imagine some website is using get method to transmit username and password. I could actually steal the URL information and hence steal your username and password and just type it into my browser like I did right now, and I could log into your account. So that is why the get method is not very secure. And very soon we'll see more examples of how you can steal or sniff or record or track or monitor somebody else's URLs or websites that they're visiting. So what are the different methods generally that HTTP protocol, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, uses to send or receive data or transmit data between users and websites? So the get method transfers query strings in the URL itself. The post method transfers query strings in the body of the HTTP request. And then you have a bunch of other requests as well, which are not very relevant to today's discussion. But there is a very interesting software called HTTP Recon. HTTP Recon, which is actually a web server fingerprinting tool. It's available as a free download on the internet. And not only does it allow you to find out the exact web server running on the victim's computer, it can also be used to monitor the HTTP requests being sent or received on your network. So I'll try to quickly open this up in my browser, so all of you get or rather on my computer, so all of you get a good idea of what HTTP Recon looks like. I hope I have this software. So I open up HTTP Recon, And I can type in some website address in this software once it's open. So I'm going to type imt.edu, select the port number, so port 80, click on analyze. What it will do is it will keep sending a bunch of different HTTP requests. So get method, head method, options method, delete method, test method, and so on. And it is going to try to guess the operating system or the web server running on the remote computer. So we are just waiting for the results. If you look at the screen, it has detected that remote server is running Microsoft IIS 7.0, which is something that, if you remember the network reconnaissance lecture, we had kind of we had done OS fingerprinting on imt.edu, and we found the same operating system. You can do the same thing that I just showed manually as well using the Telnet software. A very good Telnet client is Putty. Putty allows you to connect to a remote website. So just type in the host name or the IP address here, type in the port number and click on scan. It will connect to that particular IP address and port number, and you can perform HTTP fingerprinting. You can also just study the responses that you get when you send various HTTP commands. For example, you can try the following command: head/http/1.0 and press enter, and you should get a response like what has been displayed on the screen. Similarly, there's another software called Victo. Victo, it allows you to mirror a remote website, fingerprint a server, perform Google hacking, and also record the HTTP header information of a remote server. Similarly, there's another software called WFetch. It allows you to not only diagnose problems in communication between a user and a website, it allows you to customize an HTTP request and send it to the web server and record the raw HTTP traffic that you get from that particular server. Now, the best way to record somebody else's HTTP request. What is an HTTP request? HTTP request is nothing but the browser request. Imagine that you and I are in the same college or company. Whatever you are doing using your browser, whichever websites you're visiting, your browser sends HTTP requests to that website. It could be using get method, post method, or whatever. The question is, how can you as a criminal record or monitor or sniff somebody else's HTTP traffic? For that, you need a data sniffer, and one of my favorite data sniffers which allow you to do something like this is Wireshark. Just write it down, Wireshark. Wireshark is available as a free download on the internet. It is basically a data sniffer. If you remember, we had seen it earlier in the DOS attacks lecture. A Wireshark data sniffer will basically record all the data being sent or received on an entire network, including all the HTTP requests. So let me run the data sniffer for a few minutes. I am currently on the Talent Edge headquarters network. So there will be other employees, other team members right now who are basically surfing the internet or downloading stuff. Let me also open up some websites just so that we can generate some traffic for the data sniffer. So I do a quick Facebook refresh, go to the ClearTrip website, maybe refresh the Cricinfo website. I'm just trying to create enough data. Open up, say, timesofindia.com. all I'm doing is opening up various websites so I can create enough data packets to be recorded by this data sniffer. So we have around 10,000 data packets, right? Now, whenever you run a data sniffer, the biggest problem that we have is there is just too much data being, too many data packets being recorded. So if you look at the screen, right now we have if you look at the left column, we have close to 10,000 data packets already recorded in a minute. So how do you find out of all the data packets that have been recorded, how do you find out what are the get requests, what are the post requests, and so on? So there is something called filter. So on the top left corner, there is a filter option where you can type any filtering command. So the first filter that you can type is http.request.uri contains question mark. So it's basically doing a filter and showing you all the data packets that have been recorded by the sniffer that contains query strings. So I copy that and I paste it into this filter, press enter. And if you notice now, it has filtered out around maybe a few hundred data packets, all of which have some kind of get request or some kind of HTTP get request that has been recorded. So if you notice, I searched for flights from Calcutta to Bombay. So that has been recorded in this data packet. So if you read very carefully, you can see the exact URL over here. So basically it has recorded whatever was transmitted using the get request. Not only ClearTrip but other websites as well that other team members at Talent Edge Network right now were visiting. Even they have been recorded. Like live match feeds, dash callback or something like that. Skynet. Again, of course, Times of India Crick Info is something that I had opened up. So even that has been recorded. So that's one filter. Another filter is if you want to view all the post methods or post requests that have been recorded by your data sniffer, you can actually type the following into your filter. And what you got to type is http.request.method equal to post in double quotes. So http.request.method equal to post in double quotes. So I copy that and I paste it into this filter. And now we have been able to filter out all the data packets that was sending some query strings through the post method has been recorded as output. Now usually a lot of times when you record something using the post method, the data may be encrypted or you may not be able to make much sense of it. So if you notice, there is some kind of data that you can't really understand. So that is why post method is generally preferred or more secure than get method, where in the get method by just looking at the URL, you can find out what data is being transmitted. Next you have another filter called frame contains post. Frame contains post. So once again, let me do a Google search, a filter on it, not Google search. So frame contains post. It is showing me an error surprisingly. Well, never mind. We've already seen one filter that allowed you to get post. There's another one that allows you to filter only those data packets that represent get methods. And the filter is http.request.method equal to get. http.request.